She was scared of him. She was scared of him, and she didn't want him to get out on bond. She didn't want him to have no bond.
Police are calling this a domestic violence situation. They say the couple's toddler was home when the shooting happened, but was not hurt. Just 2 weeks ago, Tillery was arrested and charged with attacking Arrington with a knife. Again, we're working to find out why he was released from jail in that incident, and I'm making sure that we make those phone calls to get some more answers and questions answered, rather, and an update on where this investigation stands.
At 7 a.m. on April 19, 2022, gunshots tore through the quiet of Little Drive in Littleton, North Carolina, as a mother's desperate scream echoed, "Run, Montasia, run!" Moments before a young woman's life was stolen in cold blood. Welcome to True Crime Intel, where the darkest corners of human nature and the systems that fail to protect the innocent are exposed. This morning, emergency dispatchers received a frantic call, a plea for help that would lay bare one of the most devastating failures in domestic violence protection. Neighbors scrambled in terror, hearts pounding as the sound of gunfire shattered the calm of a Tuesday dawn. Police raced to the scene, their sirens cutting through the chaos, only to find a sight that would haunt them forever. There in an apartment on Little Drive lay 20-year-old Montasia Arrington, motionless, her body riddled with bullets, her life extinguished in a brutal, calculated act. Her mother, Teresa Arrington, lay nearby, bleeding from a gunshot to the hip, her desperate attempt to shield her daughter from the gunman ending in agony. Most heartbreaking of all, Montasia's 1-year-old son, Jason, was there, present during the attack, a tiny witness to the destruction of his family, his innocence forever scarred by the violence that unfolded before his eyes. A young mother gunned down, a toddler left motherless, and a family's pleas for protection ignored. How did the system let this monster walk free just weeks before? The man responsible for this massacre was no stranger. He was Jamasia Tillery, Montasia's ex-boyfriend and the father of little Jason. But here's what makes this case absolutely infuriating. Just 2 weeks earlier, Tillery had been arrested for a vicious attack on Montasia, a brutal warning of the danger he posed. She had begged for safety, pleaded for the courts to act, yet somehow the system made a choice that sealed her fate. The questions burn. Who was this gunman, driven by rage and control? Why did he target Montasia, a devoted mother trying to build a life? And what catastrophic failure let this tragedy unfold? The answers will leave everything you thought you knew about justice in America in question. Montasia Arrington was just 20 years old, a young woman whose world revolved around one precious thing, her son, Jason. Born and raised in Halifax County, North Carolina, Montasia carried a gentle and caring nature that drew people to her, a quality her grandmother, Brenda Royster, cherished deeply. She was the kind of person who put family first, especially when it came to her baby boy, a toddler barely 1-year-old who became her everything. Every choice, every breath, centered on building a safe, stable life where Jason could grow and thrive, a dream that defined her days. In early 2022, Montasia lived at the Fairfield Apartments complex in Roanoke Rapids, pouring her heart into creating that secure environment, a sanctuary for her little one. When circumstances grew tough, Montasia made a brave move, seeking the support and security only family could provide. She packed up and moved in with her mother, Teresa Arrington, in Littleton, hoping the love and strength of family would shield her and Jason. Picture a tender moment, Montasia cradling Jason, singing softly to him, tucking him into bed, her eyes bright with dreams of a future where he'd be safe, happy, and loved. That was Montasia's devoted mother, fighting against the odds for her child. But her life was complicated by a relationship that had turned toxic. Jamasia Tillery, Jason's father, lingered in her world, a shadow that worried her family deeply. They saw his possessive, jealous ways, the kind of behavior that set off alarms. Brenda Royster watched nervously, her heart heavy, sensing the danger Montasia, perhaps blinded by hope for her son's sake, tried to push aside. Montasia clung to a belief in redemption, hoping fatherhood might transform Tillery into the man Jason deserved. Even after their romance crumbled, she allowed occasional visits, wanting her boy to have a connection to his dad. The family could see the warning signs, the tension brewing, a storm waiting to break. Montasia's love for Jason drove her to balance co-parenting with a man whose darkness was growing, a risk they feared would end in tragedy. Montasia believed in redemption, but the man she trusted with her son carried a secret history that would chill any mother to the bone. Jamasia Tillery, 22 years old, was the father of little Jason and Montasia Arrington's ex-boyfriend, a man whose shadow loomed large over her life. Beneath the surface of this co-parenting arrangement lay a disturbing past, a history that painted a chilling picture of danger. Back in April 2017, when Tillery was just 16, he was convicted of felonious restraint and sexual battery against a 14-year-old victim, crimes that took place in January 2016. The court sentenced him to 30 months of probation and mandated registration as a sex offender for a minimum of 10 years, a red flag that marked him as a threat. This wasn't a youthful mistake. It was a glimpse into a mind driven by control, a trait that would only grow darker with time. By early 2022, Montasia and Tillery's romantic relationship had crumbled, leaving her to navigate a fragile balance of allowing him visits with Jason. Her hope, perhaps a fragile wish for her son's sake, clashed with the reality her family saw clearly. Tillery's jealousy burned, his possessive nature festering as Montasia tried to set boundaries, to live her life free of him. Was there a chance he'd changed, that fatherhood had softened him, as Montasia once believed? Or had those closest to her seen the truth? A man whose need to dominate was escalating, unchecked. The dynamic was a powder keg, tension building with every interaction, every glance he cast her way. His behavior, watching, clinging, unable to let go, sent shivers through her family, who sensed the storm brewing beneath the surface. A registered sex offender, a past of violence and a growing obsession. The signs were there, ominous and undeniable. One routine visit would ignite this powder keg, and Montasia's fight for survival was about to begin. April 2nd, 2022, began like any other day at Montasia Arrington's apartment in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Jamasia Tillery arrived for what seemed a routine visit with their one-year-old son Jason, part of the co-parenting arrangement Montasia upheld, despite her family's fears. She believed every child deserved a father, a hope that kept her tethered to a man whose darkness was about to erupt. The morning started calmly, but a simple request would shatter that peace. Tillery asked to use Montasia's phone to call his sister, and she handed it over without hesitation. When she later tried to retrieve it, something snapped inside him. His paranoia, festering for months, exploded into a vicious accusation. He claimed Montasia was cheating on him, despite their relationship having ended. The words hung like a lit fuse, and what followed was a nightmare of violence that left even seasoned police officers shaken. Tillery's fists flew, pummeling Montasia's face with calculated brutality. These weren't impulsive slaps. They were blows meant to harm, to dominate. Her face swelled, one eye beaten shut, her vision blurred by pain and blood. But he wasn't done. As Montasia reeled, Tillery walked to the kitchen and grabbed a knife, its blade glinting with intent. The sight of that knife must have sent terror coursing through her, a young mother realizing this wasn't just jealousy, but a fight for her life. Tillery slashed at her hands, cutting deep as she fought to defend herself. Each wound a testament to her desperate struggle to survive, to return to her son. The police report later detailed the horror. Tillery restrained her with a weapon, intent on serious bodily harm. He destroyed her phone, causing $200 in damage, cutting off her lifeline to help. Yet through sheer will, perhaps a mother's fierce love for her child, Montasia escaped the apartment, bloodied and battered, and called the police. Tillery fled, but Roanoke Rapids officers led by Officer N. Powell quickly apprehended him, the evidence of his brutality etched across Montasia's swollen face and slashed hands. He faced a mountain of charges: assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill inflicting serious injury, assault on a female, communicating threats, kidnapping, and property damage. The attack was over, but the real fight for Montasia's life was just beginning. Her plea for safety was about to face the test of a system that would let her down. Montasia begged for protection, But the court's next move would leave justice itself in question. The scars of April 2nd, 2022, were still fresh when Montasia Arrington stood in a Halifax County courtroom on April 4th, her face bruised, her hands bandaged, her heart heavy with fear. She faced Judge W. Turner Stevenson, the weight of her survival pressing down as she pleaded for one thing: keep Jamasia Tillery behind bars. Her voice, trembling but resolute, carried the terror of a mother who had looked into the eyes of a man capable of killing her. She told the court she feared for her life, her words a desperate cry for protection after Tillery's brutal knife attack just days before. This wasn't an overreaction, it was the raw truth of a woman who knew the danger she faced, a danger rooted in Tillery's history as a registered sex offender and his escalating violence. But on April 5th, Judge Stevenson made a decision that would haunt him forever. Despite Montasia's pleas, despite Tillery's criminal past and the fresh charges, assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, kidnapping, and more, he set a $40,000 bond with a no-contact order, believing it would keep Tillery detained. He was catastrophically wrong. Tillery posted just $4,000 through Palmetto Surety Corporation, a mere fraction of the bond, and by 5:45 p.m. that day, the man who had beaten Montasia's face beyond recognition and slashed her hands walked free. The system had failed her in the most fundamental way, handing her abuser the freedom to stalk, to plan, to destroy. Later, when questioned, Stevenson revealed the flawed thinking that cost Montasia her life. He said,
I mean, in hindsight, sure, I would like to go back and he have no bond and still be in jail today, but I don't get the luxury of knowing what we know now when I'm setting a bond.
But Arrington's family says it was plain to see that Tillery posed a threat, and they feel the justice system failed her.
But the heartbreak lies here. He did know enough. He knew Tillery's sex offender status, the knife attack, Montasia's terror, yet it wasn't enough to act decisively.
He was really not charged with anything that he would have gotten no bond. We would have a jail with thousands of people in it if all the domestic cases stayed no bond.
Judge Stevenson said at the time he believed $40,000 was going to be enough to keep Tillery in jail.
Could the no-contact order, a fragile piece of paper, really shield Montasia from a man who'd already shown his disregard for her life? Her family clung to that hope, but the truth was darker. Tillery was out, and he was watching. Brenda Royster's words cut deep.
She was scared of him. She was scared of him, and she didn't want him to get out on bond. She didn't want him to have no bond. And so, because she feared for her life with him.
We were under the impression that he wasn't getting a bond and that he was going to be locked up. A mother's trust in justice shattered. Montasia moved to her mother's apartment in Littleton, seeking safety, believing family and a court order might protect her and Jason. But the system's betrayal had set the stage for a tragedy that was closing in, relentless and unstoppable. Montasia moved to safety, but Tillery was watching. His next move would be unthinkable. After the courtroom's betrayal, Montasia Arrington sought refuge in her mother's apartment on Little Drive in Littleton, North Carolina, hoping family and a no-contact order would shield her and her one-year-old son, Jason. For 2 weeks, a fragile calm settled over her life, surrounded by the love of her mother, Teresa Arrington, who watched over Jason as Montasia tried to rebuild her sense of safety. The no-contact order felt like a legal shield, a promise that Jamasia Tillery would stay away. Perhaps she began to believe the worst was behind her, that the system's failure wouldn't follow her here. But for Tillery, those weeks weren't a time for reflection. They were a countdown, a period of watching, waiting, and planning his final act of control over the woman who dared to seek freedom. At 7 a.m. on April 19th, 2022, the quiet morning calm of Little Drive was shattered by the sound every domestic violence victim dreads, their abuser at the door. Tillery had found Montasia violating the no-contact order with chilling disregard. How he gained entry remains a haunting mystery, but what followed was a massacre that tore a family apart. Teresa Arrington, Montasia's mother, faced the man who had come to kill her daughter. Maternal instinct surged. She threw herself between Tillery and Montasia, a human shield desperate to save her child's life. "Run, Montasia, run!" she screamed, her voice a raw plea as gunshots erupted.
She got shot trying to save Montasia. So, she pushed Montasia out the way and told her to run.
Teresa took a bullet to the hip, collapsing in agony, yet still fighting to give her daughter a chance to escape. But Tillery's rage was relentless. The violence spilled from the apartment's interior to the outside, where more gunshots rang out, each one a deliberate choice to end Montasia's life. He shot her multiple times, both inside and outside the building, her body falling lifeless. Her dreams for Jason extinguished at just 20 years old. The most gut-wrenching detail pierces through the horror. Little Jason, barely 1 year old, was there, witnessing the murder of his mother and the wounding of his grandmother. Miraculously, he was physically unharmed, but the psychological scars of that morning would cling to him forever. Police arrived to a scene of devastation. Montasia dead, Teresa wounded, and a toddler left in the wreckage of a family destroyed. Tillery fled, a coward escaping the consequences of his calculated brutality. Montasia had done everything right, fled to safety, trusted the courts, leaned on family, yet the system's failure left her defenseless. Tillery was gone, but for 3 days, a killer roamed free. Where was he hiding? Jamasia Tillery's escape from the blood-soaked scene on Little Drive sparked a desperate manhunt that gripped Halifax County, North Carolina. Littleton Police Chief Philip Trevette issued warrants with a litany of charges: felony murder for Montasia Arrington's death, assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill for shooting Teresa Arrington, firing into an occupied dwelling, and possession of a firearm by a felon, reflecting his prior convictions. The severity of these accusations underscored the calculated brutality of his attack, a man who had gunned down the mother of his child and left a toddler to witness the carnage. The United States Marshals Service Fugitive Task Force joined the hunt, recognizing Tillery as armed and extremely dangerous, a predator who'd kill to maintain control. For 3 agonizing days, law enforcement chased leads. Each hour, Tillery remained free, fueling terror in a community haunted by the knowledge that a murderer was on the loose. Tillery had fled to Raleigh, seeking refuge among friends and family, perhaps believing distance would shield him from justice. But the net was closing. On April 22, 2022, at 4:30 p.m., U.S. Marshals, alongside the Raleigh Police Department's tactical team, tracked him down, guided by tips from the Roanoke Rapids Police and Halifax County Sheriff's Office. There was no dramatic standoff, just a pathetic man dragged into custody, his cowardice laid bare. Authorities searched his hideout, recovering a weapon believed to be the one used to end Montasia's life, a damning piece of evidence in a case already heavy with tragedy. What drove Tillery to this point? A chilling clue emerged. At some point, he posted on Facebook, apologizing to Jason and Montasia for what he'd done. Was this remorse? A fleeting moment of humanity? No, it was a final act of control, a hollow gesture meant to taunt a family he'd shattered, a twisted claim over the narrative of his destruction. Justice had caught him, booked into Wake County Detention Center to await trial. But it came too late for Montasia. The real twist cuts deeper. The system's failures, releasing Tillery on bond, ignoring Montasia's pleas, offering no monitoring, had handed him the freedom to kill. Brenda Royster's voice echoes with raw pain. She's got a little boy that will never know his mom. She wanted somebody to protect her, and we couldn't. They couldn't.
His mama had a baby. She got a little boy that would never know his mom. She wanted somebody to protect her, and we couldn't protect her. We couldn't protect her. And then she went to the people that are supposed to do the protecting, and they couldn't protect her.
Tillery was caged, but what justice exists for Jason, growing up without his mother's love, or for a system that still betrays victims? The question lingers, haunting. How many more Montasias will fall before change comes? Montasia Renee Arrington was more than a name in a police report or a statistic in the grim ledger of domestic violence. At just 20 years old, she was a daughter, a mother, a young woman with dreams, and an unshakable love for her son, Jason. Her courage shone through in every step she took, filing protective orders, escaping a brutal attack, moving to her mother's home in Littleton to shield her child from danger. She fought against impossible odds, not for herself alone, but for the future she wanted for her one-year-old boy. Yet the system that should have protected her, courts, laws, those sworn to serve, failed her, leaving her vulnerable to a predator who'd already shown his intent to kill. Her story lays bare a brutal truth. Domestic violence can strike anyone, anywhere, and its warning signs, escalating control, threats, boundary violations, intensifying violence, are often ignored until it's too late. The period after leaving an abuser, as Montasia did, is the most lethal, a fact her tragedy underscores with heartbreaking clarity. The justice system's failures in her case, a $40,000 bond that freed Jamasia Tillery, no monitoring to enforce a no-contact order, a dismissal of her terror, reflect a broader crisis. Thousands of victims are betrayed each year by outdated procedures, inadequate risk assessments, and a refusal to believe those crying out for help. Change demands more than words: standardized risk protocols, mandatory training for judges on the dynamics of abuse, electronic monitoring to enforce orders, and above all, a cultural shift to believe victims, to act swiftly, to prioritize their safety over bureaucratic convenience. Montasia's legacy must be one of awareness and action. Her story calls for communities to recognize the signs, to support victims without judgment, to amplify their voices when they say they're in danger. It's a plea to demand better from the justice system, to fund domestic violence organizations, to never turn away when someone reaches out. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Intel for more stories that honor victims and seek justice, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you seen similar cases, or what resources exist in your community? Your engagement can raise awareness and save lives. Montasia deserved to live, to see Jason grow, to chase her dreams. Her life mattered, her love mattered, her fight mattered. She rests in peace now, but her memory burns bright, a call to protect others walking her path. The question lingers, heavy and haunting. Will her story be a catalyst for change, or will it fade, another name lost to systemic neglect? Her little boy, now without his mother's embrace, deserves a world that learns from this tragedy.